And we're off. Let me make sure that I mention some dates to you really quickly as we are going to recap interpersonal communication relationships, our very last value for our very last value for that chapter 13. And why is it on a different classes page? So weird. Alrighty, so sorry y'all. I'm going through, Webex is just really doing its own thing today. All right, here we are. I just want to make certain that you understand your quizzes that are coming up, and also the big one, which is your informative speech that is coming up on 1 week from this day on the 8th. So understand that as we get to the end of interpersonal communication and relationships, on this coming Thursday, you'll have quiz number 6. Quiz number 5, which is today, is about listening. And honestly, just to be completely and totally transparent, our listening quiz, which is due today by 11:59 p.m., quiz number 5 is largely going to center just the difference between hearing and listening. Remember, hearing is physiological and listening is psychological. And we have a handout that's in the file section that's on listening that really just describes the steps of the listening process. So remember, it mirrors perception, or it reminds us of perception, in that we go through hearing, and then we have to evaluate, interpret, we have a level of understanding, and then we have retention and response. So look at the steps. Let me make sure that I share the screen right quick so I can show you where our listening handout is, because it's been a minute since we've dealt with that content. Let me come out of here, and there is a listening study guide that talks about your concepts herein. And it tells you again, remember, the difference between hearing and listening is that hearing is physiological and listening is psychological. And then the concept of the listening process includes hearing as your first step, and then evaluation, interpretation, understanding, and remembering. So those are your steps in the listening process in total. And so it's going to be really quick and an easy quiz, but that's all you really need to know for today's quiz on number 5, that's due by 11:59 p.m. And then when we get to our Thursday, then remember, you're going to take your quiz. That should be on interpersonal. Let me make sure I'm telling the truth. Nope. Oh, yes. So the first part. So quiz number 6 is on interpersonal communication, and that is really the content that we've already covered. That's really theoretical. And then the one that's coming up on the 7th is going to be about relationships. And I might actually bump that one. Let's see if we might move that one to the 10th, because we'll probably get most of our informative speeches done on the first day. And so you don't want to have to worry about doing your, most of us doing our speeches or turning them in. So please be on the lookout for an announcement. Quiz 7 very well may be moved to the 10th of March instead of March 8th. But that March 8th, that informative speeches are due, is absolutely up and stuck. That is going to be due. Okay, so your informative speeches are going to be due on the 8th of March. If you have questions or comments about our quiz, it's due today at 11:59 p.m., which is listening. Your interpersonal communication quiz, that's due on this coming Thursday, which is largely going to be about all of the stuff that we covered previously. So not inside of the relationship, such as a chart that we were just talking about, coming up and coming down, but really just the theories, such as social penetration theory, social exchange theory, uncertainty reduction, and whatnot. So that will be what's covered on this coming Thursday's quiz. If you have questions or comments about anything so far in our upcoming quizzes or our due date for our informative speech, anyone have anything at all?
I have a question. When we do like informative speech, I have seen, or I have heard you mention that we can put it on the flashcard and just read at whatever that we put on the flashcard, right?
Correct. And when we say read it, I don't want you to, your camera has to be on the whole time for that section. So not even just when you give your speech, but to be an audience for your classmates as well. So that day is a complete total camera on for the whole time class period. And when you're giving your speech, it's okay to have your index cards, but we don't want to look at, just the top of your forehead for the whole time while you're reading. You're really using the index cards to jog your memory. So it is totally fine to read something off of the cards, but we also want to see your eyes as well. So Make certain that you're looking at the camera every once in a while just to make sure we're alive still. All right, so alternate between looking at your cards and maybe even when you flip the card. So we say just put a few sentences on each one of the cards. So as you switch from one card to another, you can look up and, make sure that you make some eye contact within the camera lens. And we'll talk about all things informative speaking as soon as we just get this last part of interpersonal communication done. And that is every single question that you'd ever want to ask. We do all that stuff too. But does that help about your use of your index cards?
I'm sorry?
I was saying, does that help? Does that answer that one question at least?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, if not, I can just put like a separate note card, like note like on computer side by side with the camera, so that way it look like I'm looking at the camera.
Yeah, you can look at your cards if you want, like I said, but just don't. I don't want you to just like, down the whole time reading, just the whole time. But yeah, you're welcome to do whatever's comfortable for you since we're in this virtual environment.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, no problem. All right, any other questions about anything, including the speech, anything that y'all want to talk about? All righty. As we connect back to our interpersonal communication and relationships chapter, which is 13, we know that we've been talking about all things that are just connections between people, and we've talked at length about the theories. And remember, we gave you the guns to make certain that we understand their theories behind these relationships, sort of statuses and steps. And we solidified that while we are human animals and we're nosy, and so very largely we're going to try to find out some information or to induce within ourselves feelings of certainty. We just talked earlier before the recording started about some people trying to actually do the opposite to us and try to produce or induce uncertainty. So people kind of want to be mysterious, or they don't want to tell you their motives, or they're not answering questions like that, or whatever it is. And it's because they do have an understanding that it is, our wish and our will as humans to find out about things. And so it's kind of an act of control or withholding when someone knows that you need to know something and they don't tell it to you. All right, so think about something that, like, let's think of when someone uses the term passive aggression. Maybe you've heard that before. When someone is passively aggressive, which as a communication scholar just sounds totally oxymoronic. I'm sure the psychologists can get us together about it, but for me, aggression's aggression. So if you do it quiet or you do it loud or you do it on the sneak or whatever it is, it's still aggression. But when we're thinking about it that way, think about if someone knows that you need to know something to feel more comfortable or confident or good about them, and they just deliberately do not speak up to say it. Is it really a lie? Or is it an omission that serves the purpose of deception? For example, let's say that a person that you know is looking for an item and you know where it is. Okay, so that person has not said to you, hey, have you seen my purse? Okay, or hey, have you seen my wallet? Okay, so this person hasn't said, hey, have you seen my wallet? But they have said, I'm looking for my wallet. Okay, so the person has just announced, I can't find my wallet anywhere. I'm looking for it and I don't know where my wallet is. And they're tearing everything up and they're looking for this wallet, and the other person hasn't said a thing in the world. And then finally, when the person finds a wallet and they can see that it's very clearly within the vision of this person that's been sitting there this whole time, the person says, why didn't you tell me that my wallet was right there? Well, you didn't ask me. All right. And so that's a very bureaucratic answer, a very sort of kind of cold, denotative. I understood that you were looking for this thing, but you didn't ask me to help. So I'm not going to offer that to you. I'm not going to do that for you. And that's really whack and sleazy and awful, and it feels gross when someone knows that we're struggling with something and they don't impart to help or they don't try to do that. And in relationships and interpersonal connections, it's actually a very common thing, which is really worrisome. And so if you catch your own self doing that, I want you to think about why. So if there's someone that you can see very clearly needs a level of assistance that takes nothing from you but breath, so it's not even that you have to help carry groceries or change a tire or anything, you just literally have to say it's over there. Then why aren't you doing this for this person? Okay, so what sort of disconnect has happened that you are, contributing further to this person, disenfranchising it by not just offering just words of conciliation for this person? And then whatever it is that made you do that is very likely and part of the same pattern of someone else that would do that thing to us, so what is that motivation or that feeling? So we see that we manage uncertainty differently. Some people want to produce certainty in others. They want to tell them every single detail. So there's disclaimers. So this person says, hey, how are you doing? I'm fine. How are you? But I'm letting you know right now that even though I think your face looks nice and I like to put mine on it, I am in a relationship. It's exclusive, so we can't date or anything. I'd like for us to be friends, but I don't know how my partner will feel about it. And I don't know if you want to just really hang out and be friends. And really, what's a friend anyway? So I think we should be cool in class, but probably not like text each other unless it's for a project that we have to do together. And if there is a way that we have a project to do together, then let's not do that either, because I don't want to be attracted to you and cause a mess. And you're like, bruh, I just wanted to borrow a pencil. Okay, like that is a whole lot of disclaimer and a whole lot of words. That person does not want there to be any illusions whatsoever. They don't want to have any trouble. They just want to tell you straight out what's happening. And so we find out that when we get into these relationships, that self-disclosure, which you all were describing earlier, someone telling you the truth about them and receiving your truth as well and respecting the thing that you say, isn't an automatic for lots of people. Some people are from cultures that just don't share in that way or don't feel comfortable unless it's been like an elongated period of time. And then some people are kind of oversharers and just tell you all of the business and blah, blah, blah. And then if you feel special because that person shared this deep, dark secret with you, it may not really be that special because that person is advertising that same information to absolutely everyone. On last class at the end, we got through a newer theory, and newer not to the communication sciences, but to us that was called dialectical theory. And dialectical theory takes us really through these stair steps of when we're coming together and we're coming apart, and has us choosing in our brains which way we want to go with whatever type of this relationship is, if there is going to be one. And we said these three pair sets always stay together. We said that we have connection versus autonomy, meaning that we want a title. We want to make certain that everyone is clear on our role and which stair step that we're on in this relationship. And at the same time, we might also want to be independently governed. We want to make sure that we don't have to check in with anyone. We don't want to feel as if we're owned or that we belong to someone or others belong to us, that we would have to control or help or have the burden of their care or responsibility. So think about the concept of like being an aunt or an uncle. Put it in the chat really quick, or unmute yourself. Is there anyone besides me on the call that's an aunt or an uncle? Anyone an aunt or an uncle out there?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. So,
Yes.
all right. So anybody that's an aunt and an uncle. And what's the cool thing about being an aunt or an uncle? You get to play with the kids and hang out with them and buy them ice cream when you feel like it. And they get to go home, right? All right. So it's not like the same thing, like you're bound, like you don't have to make sure they have a babysitter before you leave out of the house. Hope knows it. Okay, so you don't have to feed and clothe this person. You don't have to make sure that you have enough money or to have a job. You don't have to make certain that you know all of your niece or your nephews or your nibblings, like sort of school friends. You don't have to know all of that stuff, but you just have to be present in the moment, loving on this kid and making sure that you're being there for them and being cool. But then it's a and leave situation, so it's not like you're bound to this thing, but it's bound in love, not necessarily in love that's conflated with a particular obligation. And depending on what type of culture that you're a part of, in my community, aunts and uncles are super duper important, and they have a role, and they definitely have a place in the hierarchy of the family. At the same time, it allows you to have sort of the benefits of being connected to this kid, but also the autonomy to say, well, it's Friday night, I'm about to go out, I'll see y'all later, everybody stay up, be nice to your mommy, I'll see you another time. So it's kind of like we get the best of both, and people try to do this in their peer relationships all the time. Oh yeah, I got the title, that's why when I come in the house, you better have my slippers ready, I want my favorite newspaper sitting there, make sure you have my show on, all of this stuff. And at the same time, hey, I never said that we were married, so you can't like hold that against me or expect that I'm going to change your tire every time it gets flat. And it's like, what are we doing exactly? Alrighty, so you kind of want your cake and eat it too, which sounds idiomatically incorrect, but it is. Okay, so because have in this sense means you want to enjoy whatever it is and also save it for later, and you can't do both. You either enjoy it now and you don't have it, or you save it and you don't have it now. Questions or comments about connection versus autonomy? All right, and the next, openness versus closedness, is pretty straightforward. You want to tell your business, but at the same time, you want to tell all your business. You want to hear this person's business. You want to hear what they have to say and what they feel about life, but not so much that it burdens you or obligates you or sometimes kind of gets in your way. Think about competitions that people have sometimes over who had the worst day or who had the worst time or who had the best day or who's got the best news. And I always love on television shows, you're like, I've got something important to tell you. And the other person's like, I have something so important to tell you. Or the person's like, I got something that I want to ask you about or talk to you about. And they're like, can it wait? Can it wait just a minute? I am so nosy, y'all. There is no way in the world that somebody would tell me they had something to tell me. And I would be like, okay, just wait, wait, wait. We'll just wait until after this party or wait until after. I'm like, let's find a corner right quick so you can, drop whatever this is so I can hear about it. Because I'm nosy, but some people don't want to be bothered with other people's information. It's offensive to them. They think that they're competing with them or trying to have like a better story. And it's very important that we understand that. And I know that you're tired of me saying that everything is cultural, but it really is, y'all. Everything is cultural. Think about the concept of what we call crosstalk. In your culture, do you have any sort of facet of people helping each other to tell the narrative or the story? So think about a person saying, so I went down to Foley's yesterday, and the person says Macy's. Yeah. So I went down to Macy's yesterday and I went to buy these shoes, and they were the shoes like the ones that they're supposed to be like kind of like orthopedic and they're really expensive. Like, you mean like not the Mad Mary Janes, right? No, like the Clarks. Yeah, I had a pair of Clarks that I got like from a consignment shop 2 years ago. Oh, yeah. So it was one of those things. So not Mary. I know you're not talking about Mary's shoes that we found from this place. And the person's kind of like talking while you're talking at the same time, like kind of interjecting. And in some cultures, that's completely and totally fine for that person to be adding names and titles and showing expressions of understanding and solidarity. And then some people that are for more individualistic, denotative, like straightforward, monochronic, turn taking, high power dynamic cultures are not interested in that at all. And they'd be very offended if you kind of interrupt them. Now, this is not the same thing as when someone just straight out interrupts you when you say, hi, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going on with my computer. Oh, my goodness, let me tell you about my computer. Well, first of all, the Webex is tripping this morning. And so the person like hijacks it and just takes over the whole story. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about someone even just agreeing with you or discussing with you the same thing that you're talking, but also speaking while you're in transitions in your conversation. And so that openness versus closeness can manifest that way too. So that could be situational, like Ethan mentioned, that it's not that you never want to be open with a partner or you always even want to be closed off, but maybe this one particular person, the way that they talk or how they take turns or the type of information that they share is not pleasant to you. So we have to manage not only how much of ourselves that we want to share with this person, but what type of information and the quantity of information that we want from another as well. You all have heard of the acronym TMI before, when someone is offering too much information. You're like, hey, how are you doing today? And they're like, oh, fine. I'm going to go get a colonoscopy because whoa. I'm just being polite. We're in the hallway. I don't need to know all about your guts right now. That's okay. Thank you so much. All right. So think about how much information you want a person to share and what type of information. And then the last pair set, any questions or comments, firstly, about openness versus closeness? All right, and then the last pair set, we've got novelty versus predictability, where we said novelty is mostly just like something fun, fast, new, and predictability is something reliable, steadfast, and fortitudinous, which means that some of us want relationships that are just kind of chaotic. Do you understand? Some people like to fuss. Like that is a real thing. Like people like to argue. They like to have something going on that's dramatic, or they want to have, oh, this person's bothering me for this reason. Like we discussed, they kind of want haters or they want something to happen, but it's in their own relationship too, that they want some source of what we'll find out in the next couple of minutes is conflict. They want to identify something that's wrong so they can always be fixing something or working on something. And usually that's a projection we find out in speech communication. So if you're kind of like not operating under the agreed to tenets or rules of the relationship, then you'll constantly find something else that's wrong with it. So we have all of these problems. It's not just me that's violating the contract, but here we have all of the rest of these problems to deal with too. So we'll invent some things that are novel or just, aren't like the biggest deal. So my partner is a guy, and he is my husband, and we met at U of H, and we've been together for 7,622 years. And I was home yesterday teaching, or no, I taught 2 classes face to face, and I came home still after I taught, and I put our dinner on for the day, and I washed the little clothes and folded them up, and I swept, and I got all the stuff done, and just crunk, just doing chores and doing a whole bunch of stuff, and had gotten everything ready. And then he came home like 15 minutes early. He's like, hey. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? He's like, the gate is open. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, the gate to the backyard is open. I was like, oh, well, I don't know, the wind might have swung it open or something. It was like, oh yeah, but just, be careful. Make sure you close the gate. I'm like, I know you did not. You come in here smelling dinner. The dishwasher is going. You see the clothes folded up. You do all this. Like, I'm having a problem. Like, I know that you're not talking about this gate swinging open. And it seems like a novel little itty bitty thing. Like, how many times could this thing happen? The dog was inside. Like, there was no emergency. Like, what in the world was the big deal? And he's exactly the opposite. He was like, all I said was the gate wasn't open. I didn't know what had been done. I didn't know you need to be congratulated for all the regular stuff that everybody does in the house. But if I can't tell you the gate is open, then why, we can't communicate about something. So when it's predictable, you kind of know how things are going to go. When it's something novel, it seems like a meteor, like out of space, like somebody just comes out of nowhere and it's like, you know what, good morning. It's something about your face. It just makes me want to punch it. And I don't know what it is. It just like came to me in a dream. And I'm just really angry at you. It's like, okay, well, get it together in your own brain first and try to find out what is itching you. And then we can try to figure it out as, a partner community. Questions or comments about these tensions that go on in your head only. Don't share them with the other person, please, unless you want to get that, that kind of list back to you. So connection versus autonomy. You want the title, you want to be exclusive in some way, or you want that partnership, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want the obligations or the responsibilities that go with that type of partnership. So you kind of want to be an aunt, maybe an aunt or an uncle, but not necessarily a parent. Then we get openness versus closeness, where both the type and the quantity of information is what is at play here. How much do you want to share and receive versus how much do you not want to expose about yourself and not have to listen to from the other person? And then novelty versus predictability, which talks to us about having more of a theme or an energy in that partnership of just kind of it being loose and fun versus it being very predictable, reliable, and maybe sometimes even boring at stretches because it just doesn't feel like we're being spontaneous or doing new stuff. Questions or comments about dialectical theory before we end with conflict? Alrighty, and thank you. And what I mentioned on last class, conflict is a speech communication term that has entered the vernacular. And so we will say that we have a conflict with this person or that one, but really the definition of conflict in speech communication requires that we are invested in an interpersonal communication relationship. Remember, we've been talking about levels of relationship types, whether they're circumstance or choice, but even before then, we talked about really just your brain, yourself, your schema, and your thought process being your intrapersonal communication, that prefix INTRA. And then if we are sort of just hi and goodbye, which we call phatic communication, such as a person that you pass in the hallway and sneezes and you bless them or say salute or something that acknowledges this person has sneezed or snoozed. If you hand something to someone and they say thank you to you, that sort of banter that's just part of ritual. That is an impersonal person. If you don't know that person and have an origin story, a trajectory, and a semblance of the future, but if you are truly in a dyad and you have a starting point, you are having a present that you're enjoying together, and that you believe that there will be a future in the roles that you enjoy, then that's your interpersonal sets of partnerships. And those are the only ones, according to speech communication, that are eligible for conflict, because conflict has to have a level of interdependence, meaning that what happens to one partner will impact the other partner. And we have to have at least one of the 3 criteria that is perceived by at least one of the partners and say it out loud. So when we say that the struggle has to be expressed, it can't be that one partner just giving the other partner the silent treatment and the other partner has no idea what it's about. The one partner who's given the silent treatment, if they decide not to be silent and officially ramp this thing up to a conflict and say, I'm really just aggy with you and I don't know why. Like, I don't know why I'm upset with you, but something is getting me about you right now, and I don't want to be mean to you or act up, but I just am bothered. Like, I'm annoyed by something. And it's definitely you. It's like I'm targeting you for some reason, and I don't want to be like that with you. So until I figure it out, accept my apology, and I'll go and work it out over here. Because sometimes a person who says I have a problem doesn't even know what that problem is. It can be everything. It can be a whole bunch of things. I explained that to my kid the other day. I was upset about something, and I was like, "It's not this one thing that you did. It's an amalgam of me being stressed out about what it seems like a pattern between these last three things that we've had the same type of conversation." And that's not that person's fault. It's not her fault that you've hit the limit of things that you can be upset about without feeling like really annoyed or tense about them. But it is okay for you to express this part to your partner. So we've been talking about dialectical tensions. We've been talking about that social exchange theory, the interpersonal needs theory, where you're identifying why you want to be in a relationship with this person. And probably those things would not be appropriate to tell your partner, you know what, you look really good. You kind of smell when you come off the basketball court, but you look so good that it's going to like up my profile and we're going to look good in pictures and my IG posts are going to be fire. So I really do kind of want to stick with it. And then maybe we'll be able to get you some deodorant together and we'll figure it out. And the person's like, what did you just say to me? Like, what's happening? That's never going to work. So that's in your own head situation that you try to reconcile. However, conflict, that's something that you definitely have to have as an expression with your partner. You have to figure out what the problem is, what you're perceiving as the problem, and what it is that we can do to fix it. And so our resolution strategies are below. But remember, the three criteria that we have to have the perception of at least one of these things is incompatible goals, that we think we want two different things, scarce resources, that we feel like we're running out of something, whether it's an actual tangible something like cereal, like we mentioned, or running out of time or chemistry or the spark between us, or a third party interference. And again, that can be a twofold definition, or that can be an actual real person. So it could be somebody's mom in the business or dad in the business, or your sister is hating, or whatever it is. Or it could be a concept, such as we're in a long distance relationship, or let's say you're in school and I'm not, so I don't understand that you have to do work and you have to study, or I don't appreciate it. Or it could be the weather, literally, like it is too cold for us to fuss, or it's too hot for us to try to make it, on a date because I don't have air conditioning, or whatever it is. Do we have questions or comments about the definition of conflict, including the three perceptions, at least one, that we have to have in order for it to be a conflict between two interdependent interpersonal partners? Okay, in our textbook, we talk about conflict resolution strategies, and we'll go through these pretty quickly. First one is easy peasy. We're just not going to talk about it. So withdrawal means that we're just not going to deal with whatever it is. So the conflict that we're going to be centering in this example is the one that we brought up on last class. How we get to this party, what time we're going to this party. This party says on paper that it starts at, let's make the party start at 7 o'clock. So one of the partners says, okay, the party starts at 7. We're going to be there right at 7. And the other partner says, no. I mean, are we the help? Like, we're not getting there at 7. We're going to get there. We're going to fall in like at 9 or something. I thought we were going to get something to eat before anyways. The other person says, well, there's going to be food at the party. It says it right here that it's a dinner. So we should go at 7. And if you're not, excited about going, then if we go at 7, then we can leave early. Even if we go at 9, the other partner says, we could still leave early. There's no rule that says we have to be here. Those are your friends anyways, and they don't even talk to me when I'm there. Now we're in a problem. Okay, we're in an official problem that started out with an invitation to a party that begins at 7, and one person wants to go at 7 and the other person wants to go at 9. So if we are going to withdraw from it, then we're just not going to talk about it at all. So either partner number 2, who wants to go at 9, either just says, nope, you know what? Let's do it this way. There is no party. I'm not going. It doesn't matter what time we go because we won't be going because I'm just not doing it. Okay, I'm not doing it at all. So withdrawal means I'm not going to do that thing. I'm not going to talk to you about it. We're not going to deal with it. We're going to act like it never happened. I won't even be salty for the next 3 days. I'm just going to ignore it like it's not even going to, like it wasn't a thing that happened in our life. Now, what do we think are the possible issues with withdrawal? First of all, that person doesn't get to go to the party. The other person's by themselves, and they either have to not go as well, which is a point of force and control, really, to keep that other person from going and enjoying themselves. So either I don't get to go at all out of solidarity with you, who is now not going, or I go and have to keep asking questions about where you are, so I'm not really enjoying myself, and I'm going despite you not going, which can involve a whole different level of problems after. So withdrawal is really not the cool thing. It's different than when we think about deferring our communication. So when you defer, you just say you're going to talk about it later. And hopefully you do talk about it later. But withdrawal means we're not going to talk about it at all. Accommodating talks to us about just letting the other person have what they want. I want to be there at 7. She wants to be there at 9. Okay, cool. Then 9 it is. That's fine. Whatever you like. So as soon as that person establishes themselves as subservient, sure, anything that you say. I was thinking vanilla. Well, you know that chocolate is my very favorite, and I'm actually kind of allergic to those vanilla beans. Do you think we could do it chocolate this time? Well, fine then. If you don't want to do what I want, that's cool. You always do what you want, and that's fine. But sure, I guess, yeah, let's have vanilla. You're like, okay, never mind. Let's just get 2, and you can get vanilla also. Where we never even get to the point that we're asking, why can't that person just convert to chocolate for that one day, or what is the big deal? This one has an actual allergy to this one. This one is just a preference. Why are we playing about it? So the downside of accommodating can be that the other partner thinks that you're a pushover, or that you kind of get used to playing that role. And then the person who is being subservient can kind of snap, and they can get tired of sacrificing and accommodating all the time. And then it could be something very small on a random Thursday at 2 where the person says, the sun is kind of in my eyes really quickly. Will you switch with me? And then this person is thinking, now, if the sun is in your eyes, why would you think I'd want to sit there with the sun in my eyes? Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. We're breaking up and your mom is dumb. I mean, just go completely and totally off over just this one thing where 1,200 other things have been accommodated. And now today is the day of reckoning that that's not going to happen. Then we have forcing, which is also not the cool thing. And even says, never do this. And this one is really serious, y'all. I'm cheeky and I make fun of lots of stuff, but I want to make sure that you understand that the 2 behaviors that we've described before in conflict resolution, which are withdrawal and accommodating, both carry with them sort of a level of control that can be deleterious. Forcing proper, however, is the one that is most deleterious, and we need to be careful if we ever catch our own selves engaging in these types of behaviors, or we need to consider them not even a red flag, but a sounded alarm if they happen to us. And we need to get safe, and we need to make certain that if this is just a one-off transgression that is stress-induced, if we can reconcile it that way, then we may think of still changing the role that you have between you and this, the roles, between you and this other person, but probably not continue on that same path with that person regardless. When we are forcing in communication, we are threatening to take away someone's livelihood, their children, diminish their reputation, impair them economically and financially, take away their housing, make it difficult for them to correspond or communicate with their family members through isolation or alienation. Someone that stands in front of the door physically obstructs you and says, you're not leaving until we figure this out. You're going to talk to me. So if someone has sent 17 text messages in the last 34 seconds or a minute's time, someone that pops up at your job and demands to speak with you, even though your employees are there and your boss is there, someone who is not going to let you sleep by virtue of, continuous arguments, or doesn't let you dislodge from the conversation. These are behaviors that in different formation have happened to some children from their parents. And think about your parent compelling you to talk to them for some reason, coming into your room. Nope, we're going to solidify this right now. You're going to tell me this, or you're going to do these dishes immediately. And I don't care if it's 3 a.m. I already told you to clean the house up. Get up and clean this up right now. So those are superior subordinate communications that can come off as abusive to certain cultures. But understand, when it's a peer-to-peer relationship, it is almost always abusive. There is not a way to justify or to say that someone that is supposed to be in a peer-to-peer relationship with you, that outside of you preventing them from driving under the influence, you have taken their keys or their transportation, or not allowed them to shower, or told them that there is some sort of consequence over not speaking to you or attempting to resolve this conflict. So if someone is telling you, you need to call him right now and tell him you're done with him, break up, that consequence, that's the force right there. And we need to be very, very careful that we're not falling into those types of behaviors that are pushy and abusive and presumptuous, and that impair people on those types of levels, not only because a lot of those behaviors are considered terroristic threats or domestic violence pathways, but there are things that are just not moral and not the cool thing. So we want to be better than that. And some of us catch ourselves doing that. I went to college. I had the same guy that wants to know about the gate. My husband's my boyfriend. And I've caught myself being like, no, we're going to finish this right today and we're going to talk and you're not leaving out of here. And then you have to check yourself and be like, what am I doing? What power dynamic am I inducing? Because if the roles are reversed, would this be okay? Would it be okay for him to be physically obstructing me from the door? Would that be legal? Would that be all right? And so find out in your own self if you are having these behaviors materialize and what's happening there. Questions or comments about forcing? Anyone have anything at all? All right, don't do it and get away from it if you can. Tell whatever lie that you need to tell. If someone says, you're going to talk to me right now or you're not leaving this house. Okay, let's talk. And then try to get to a phone, try to get to some way to alert someone to help and physically leave that space if you can, because that is not the cool thing. We hear that words can't hurt us, but think about this, young people. Can words preview for us the actions that can happen from this person? Can a person telegraph the level of rage or anger that they have towards you that it might be escalating? That is absolutely true. So we need to be very careful with that. Questions or comments about forcing? Anyone have anything at all? Then you may have noticed the final two at the end seem so similar that it's a little difficult to decipher the differences of negotiating and collaborating. So if these people were horrible and engaged in forcing, okay, thank you, then one person would say to the other, no, these are my friends. You're right. It's at 7:00 and I have done too much for you. And I know that you don't want me to cut you off. I'm sure that you wouldn't have a great time paying the rent by yourself this month, will you? So I think you should get in the car and we're going to go for 7:00 and you're going to be nice and you're going to be polite. And I don't want to hear another thing about it. So if that person has threatened to withhold the rent or has said that they are not going to sustain you in the contract that you made previously, if you do not get in this car and go at 7:00, we got a problem. That's forcing. But if they were better people and they were better in the negotiation in that moment, so not a better person, but if they were better at sort of an arrangement inside of an arrangement, then they can engage in negotiation. It could be really simple. Easy peasy. Everybody gives up one part in order for us to resolve this conflict. I want to be there at 7. You want to be there at 9. Rocket science says we get there at 8. So I lose an hour and you lose an hour in some way. And so I don't get exactly what I want. You don't get exactly what you want. And we get somewhere that's comfortable. So you're not going what you think is exactly at start time of the party at 7. And I am there close to the start time and not as far away as 9. So negotiating means that we're both going to agree to sacrifice something in order to resolve this conflict. Collaborating means that we're not going to give anything up, but rather get to the root of what the conflict is and then try to reframe it in a way that allows us to decide what sort of concessions or payment, if we want to think about it that way, that we'll get for changing our view on whatever this thing is. If we're talking about the time, for instance, 7 and 9 p.m., one person wants to go at 7, the other person wants to go at 9. If we're collaborating, we're going to start with, okay, why? Tell me. Okay, it starts at 7. Why do you want to be there at 7? And the person says, well, I don't really want to stay all that late and they're having food. It's like a dinner and I'm going to be leaving work at 5:00 and driving straight there. And so I can get off work early. I'm not going to go to lunch. So honestly, I'm going to be kind of hungry and I've never been to this restaurant before. So I want to make sure that I get first dibs on whatever it is. And also her mom is going to be there and she's not going to stay for very long. So I want to make sure to talk and connect with her. So then the other person may say, all of that is legit. That makes perfect sense to me. That's cool. And all right, is it possible for us to take 2 cars then, since you said you're going to come straight from work instead of me meeting you at your job? Can I just come a little bit later? And I will be there, but I just really don't want to be there at 7:00. And the person says, okay, why don't you want to be there at 7:00? Well, you just said you're going to be eating and you're going to be talking to her mom and you're going to be doing all those things. And I just feel like since they're not my friends, I'm kind of just like sitting there. I'm in the cut. I'm not really doing anything. So can I just meet you there later? So when you collaborate, you're finding out what is your motivation for wanting this? What is my motivation for wanting this? And where can we convene where it's not going to hurt either one of us to just change how we feel about this thing? So then it becomes more of a principle argument than a material argument. When something is material, it has like a tangible or weighted visceral quality. So we're talking about the exact time of 7 or 9 o'clock. But when it's in principle, we're talking about really sooner and later, or to get involved with the things that I want to do, such as eating after work and talking to old girl's mom. And what you want to do is not just kind of be sitting there unattended while I'm, eating and talking, and instead feel like I have time to engage you as well. So we're talking about the principles of these things and not so much an actual time period. Questions or comments about our definition of conflict or conflict resolution strategies as we transition into public speaking? Anyone need anything at all? Once, twice. Alrighty, thank you. I want to make sure that everybody is up and awake. I'm gonna stop sharing for just 1 second. Y'all used to at least show me some of your foreheads, but you're gonna have to anyways, because we're gonna be doing our public speaking, and you have to have your cameras on for those 2 class periods. But we want to make sure that we get ready for that concept. All right. So whatever your background is going to be, or whatever cool stuff. I mean, you don't have to feel guilty. It's okay, Jen. You don't have to feel guilty and turn it on now. But you're welcome to do it. Oh, look, I got other fans. Sarah's okay. My bun's doing a lot too. That's all right. Thank you. Alrighty. So I just want to make sure that y'all are awake and okay, because I know that first part was like really tedious. And if you notice, I'm like trying to get through it because public speaking is my baby. You're going to love it. It's going to be super fantastic and great. All right, so I'm going to show you some things on the in the file section and just around where we submit our stuff, but we just want to get kind of the logistics of the assignment first. So I'm giving you the guns for all of this because this concerns you. Now I feel like a broadcaster. It has come to my attention. All right, so as it has come to my attention that our section that meets online anytime is also viewing the recordings or the videos, some part of it, not the pictures, just the sound, so no one knows who you are or what's happening. But is listening to some of that content. If you are an online anytime class, please remember that you are submitting recordings of your speech, and every other submission procedure is the same. However, if you are in my 930 illustrious MVP level 1311 class, then you are online on a schedule, and you're going to perform your speech live here in Webex with your cameras on for the entirety of class. So here are the guns for the details that are technical and the logistics. Your speech must be informative, and it is a specific speech type that's endorsed by the National Communication Association, meaning that your job is only to provide information. We are not yet going to do any persuasion. So you're not telling an audience what it should do or what it should like or feel or what it should think. Your job isn't to influence this time, but rather just to give us a cool story, bro. Just tell us about your family's trip to the Grand Canyon, or why the peacock is your favorite animal, or cool things to do on a vacation in Montana, or about your NASCAR participation, or the concept of, you listening to the whole Detroit Become Human soundtrack 5 times in a row and what you learned from this experience. Whatever it is you want to talk about, your favorite anime, your favorite manga, your favorite this or that. You can even do a speech that's kind of a hodgepodge. It's called My Favorite Things. You can talk about 2 or 3 things that you like. So if you want to give us a piece of history, you want to tell us about yourself, a thing that you like, a thing that you're interested in, something you want to learn more about, anything that you can think of that you can just provide to us in information form, you are welcome to select any topic that you like. So your job is to inform us. Just tell us whatever this content is, and you will do so in a speech that will run 3 to 5 minutes long. So the time range that you have to deliver this formal speech is 3 to 5 minutes. And the thing that makes it formal is that we will use a system called the full sentence outline template. Now, let me tell you, your professor is a professional speech writer, part of the Speechwriters Association of Texas and the nation and all that good stuff, and get paid to write speeches. And this is exactly the same template that I use as well. And I didn't develop it. It's, again, from the National Communication Association. So if you're on Word or on some sort of program that recognizes that there's an outline and it says, hey, looks like you're writing an outline. Can I help? Please tell that program, I got it, bruh. That's all right. I have it right here. Because what you're going to have right here is when you get to the file section, a bunch of information that tells us how to operationalize this outline, and also the template itself that you can type directly into. So where you see outline template right here in the file section, you're going to click on this, and eventually when it's your turn and your time, you're going to click download, and then you're going to type your content into it, save it as a Word or a PDF document, and then we will submit it. Okay, we're going to make sure that we submit this to the assignment portal. So we'll go over in the next couple of minutes all the tenets of this full sentence outline template. But so far, I want you to understand that your job is to type into this template every single word you plan on saying, exactly as you plan on saying those words in the order that you're going to produce them. For example, if I want to tell you about my trip to the Grand Canyon, I'm not going to type, I will tell them about the trip. But instead, I will type, y'all, my trip to the Grand Canyon was so extra. Let me tell you what happened. You're typing it in the first person, as if another one of your classmates could grab your outline actually and give nearly the same identical speech. This is not an English class. There is no essay that is required because essays are designed to be read, but speeches are designed to be heard. So herein, you're taking really the same information that you would put in an essay, and instead of compacting those things into sets of paragraphs that are built by sentences, you will extrapolate those sentences and make them part of the outline. So you will have, let's say, if we look at main point A here, main point A and its subsequent support materials are essentially a paragraph. So let's say we were talking about the Grand Canyon, and then main point A, the lead sentence would be this main point that would say, my trip to the Grand Canyon started with the dream of saving up enough money to travel by car. And then your support material 1 would say, I cleaned up at the cemetery and got a whole bunch of money for it. Supporting material 2 would say, I found out how much gas it would take and how much the car rental would be. Supporting material 3 would say, after we rented the car and filled it up with gas, we figured we had this much money for food left. Okay, so you would take those same things that you would essentially put in a paragraph, but you elongate them into this template, and that's really for self-editing purposes. Meaning, if you were in real life in front of a group of people and you were given a time range that was tighter than our 3 to 5 minutes, let's say that the people said you only have 4 minutes to present flat and that's it and that's all. At minute 4, the thing cuts off and your microphone is no longer legible. No one can hear what you're saying. Then this would mean if you're going through your speech and you kind of notice, you say, oh no, I was supposed to be through with main points A and B by 3 minutes and 10 seconds, and I'm only on main point A. I need to start to adjust and sort of edit some things. That instead of getting rid of or not performing your main points, it would be okay for you to just perform, let's say, one of your support materials and not the 2 others. Let's get that back to the example of what we just talked about with our imaginary Grand Canyon speech. Remember, we just said, if I were going to tell you about my trip to the Grand Canyon, I might start with main point A, talking about how to afford the trip to the Grand Canyon. So main point A would say, my trip to the Grand Canyon started out, it was really extra, but it started out with the dream of figuring out, how much it's going to cost for me to do this thing. And the supporting material 1 is going to talk about the concept of us estimating how much it's going to cost, collecting a whole bunch of money. And then supporting material 2 was, after we have a whole bunch of money, estimating how much it would cost to rent the car and to gas it up. And then supporting material 3 would discuss, now that I know how much it is to gas up a car and to rent it, how much money do I have left over for us to eat on the way there? If I were giving this speech and I was running out of time, maybe I don't have to give support material 3 that talks about the money that I have left to eat, and I only discuss with the audience that I got some money and then this is how much it's going to cost for the gas and how much it's going to cost to rent the car to drive it there. So we can kind of self-edit or self-censor. So next class is going to be focused mostly on going through every single detail of the full sentence outline and what you put in it, but we will preview it today as well. So this full sentence outline template is in the file section of Canvas. And please also notice that there is an example of what an A looks like. Okay, so the outline example discusses what a student has put in a speech about preparation for the zombie apocalypse. And the student has populated every single value from what we will learn is called the above the fold material here. That's for the line that is not enunciated or pronounced, but is really just sort of a guide or a planner for the rest of your speech. And then the actual speech that is spoken from your introduction as Roman numeral 1, the body, Roman numeral 2, and the conclusion, Roman numeral 3, which is essentially just a recap. So this speech came in about 4 minutes and 27 seconds, and the student has indeed typed out every single word that she planned on saying, and she only said those words that are here on the outline. So when students say, and it's always scary for me when they say, well, we don't have to say exactly what's on the outline, right? Well, it's not someone else's speech that you memorized, it's your speeches that you've written. So you're going to type out only the things that you want to say, and you're going to only say the things that you typed out. Like there's really not a reason for it not to match identically. It should be only what you plan on saying, and then you only say those things that you have typed. So yes, your job is to say only what it is that you have typed here and to type out every single thing that you plan on saying. So you have an example of what an A looks like, and then you also have down here where it says speech content guide. It will be a print version of what I will lecture and help you to understand going line by line of the, of the outline template itself. So it gives you really a formulaic approach. Remember that I just mentioned that there is a position called the above the fold material that really serves as a guide, but is not said out loud. So let's take this, for instance, to explain how the content guide goes. So it tells you this is where you type your name, title. You choose anything that you want to. Your general purpose will only and always have just 2 words, a verb, which describes what you plan on doing, which is the point, also known as the purpose of your speech. Such as for this first speech, every single person in the class will have exactly the same general purpose: to inform, not to tell or to educate or to storyfy, but to inform, just those 2 words. And then your specific purpose gets to the subject of your speech. And so you will type out to inform the class about my trip to the Grand Canyon, or to inform the class about tacos, or to inform the class about whatever it is that you're going to discuss. And then you keep building on that, redundant as it is, for your thematic statement, which is the same as a thesis statement. And you're going to have the entirety of your specific purpose plus each main point that you plan on putting forth. And a main point, as we just discovered, is a lead sentence, also known as a subtopic. If we're going to talk about a trip to the Grand Canyon, for instance, our thematic statement, our above the fold material would say, Professor Rayner, and then the title, Grand Canyon, exclamation point, because everyone likes exclamation points. General purpose, to inform. Specific purpose, to inform the class about my trip to the Grand Canyon. Thematic statement, I will inform my class about my trip to the Grand Canyon, including the money that I spent to get there, the things that we did once we were there, and also the cool attractions we saw on the way home. So those are 3 main points, or 3 subtopics concerning the trip to the Grand Canyon that we're going to discuss. So it's not generalized or generic, but we're telling the audience, when we do tell the audience, because this is just a planning document, when we do tell the audience, we will say in our thematic statement that's inside of our introduction, here is what you can expect to hear. Okay, so you can expect to hear about these 3 things in particular. The number of main points that you have for this speech for the informative, the minimum is 2. This means if you're going to tell us about the traditional Aoyai, then we need to have 1 main point about its history and at least 1 main point about its contemporary use. If you're going to talk to us about your favorite, let's say your favorite show on Netflix, then you're going to talk about, firstly, here's who's actually paying for my Netflix subscription, why I like Hunter x Hunter so much, and what I think is going to happen in sort of the fan canon behind it. So we'll have 3 main points here. If you're going to tell us about the intersection between Black History Month and Women's History Month, then we need at least 1 main point on Women's History Month, 1 main point on Black History Month, and maybe if you want a 3rd main point on how months get designated anyways as celebrating certain parts of the populace or the culture. So this means that you have to have a minimum of 2 main points, and most students prefer 2 or 3 because you have to make certain that it doesn't matter how many pages that your outline will run, but rather how many minutes that it takes for you to speak it. Okay, so you have to speak it within 3 to 5 minutes. Also in this content guide, you have some tips for your template that talk about using only full sentences, just 1 or 2 sentences for each one of these bricks. And then again, how you type these things in the present tense. So you're not saying, I will tell them about this, but rather, here, this is y'all. So you're saying this thing to this person. Questions or comments about anything that we've learned about so far in the template or the content guide itself, as we transition to learn where to submit it and all that good stuff. Questions or comments? Okay, and it sounds like a lot, but it's going to be okay. Let's recap really quickly the information that's in the file section that'll help us out. Firstly, we have the outline template itself, and we will use the same outline for both the informative and the persuasive speech. So we have the outline template, an example of the outline that is totally populated and earned an A. Okay, so you have the outline example, and then you want to scroll down to where it says speech content guide, and it lets us know how to use or operationalize the outline. Your speech is 3 to 5 minutes long. You get to choose whichever topic that you like. All right, so after you have clicked into the outline template, typed every word you plan on saying, saved it as a Word document or a PDF, then you're going to bop over to the assignments tab and you'll see the informative speech assignment. And you're going to click on informative speech, and whereas I have an edit button, then you will have a submit button. Alrighty, and so you can actually just copy and paste and drop it in there, or you can save it as a Word or a PDF, but please be careful with like pages. Unfortunately, the technology hasn't caught up to accept different types of files. So really Word or PDF is probably your safest bet here. And it mentions to us, if you're an online on a schedule student, as my 9:30 section, then you're going to perform your speech live in Webex. If you're an online anytime student, then please be reminded that you're going to, perform this asynchronously via video. Now, the difference that concerns you as an online on a schedule student is that your job is to get your outline in by class's start time. Okay, so by the time our class begins. So if you're an online on a schedule student, then we have our first day of speeches, which is the 8th of March in this class. So if your speech is due on March 8th and our class begins at 9:30, then your outline needs to be uploaded to this system by 9:29 in 10 seconds, because one of my jobs is to open up your outline on the device, and as you are giving the speech to the class, to go through your full sentence outline and see how faithfully you're executing what you have said you're going to say. I'm the only person, whether you're an online on a schedule or an online anytime class, besides your own self, that will see your outline. None of the rest of your classmates will know what you're supposed to say or the order in which you say it. So we don't have to be nervous about messing up, because no one knows how it's supposed to go. I'm the only one who knows besides you how it's supposed to go, and I won't tell it. I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader, and you're going to do fantastic, certainly. So we're not going to belabor any mistakes or if you say anything that you didn't prefer to say. So no one else is going to see your outline at all. But because it's a public speech, then your class, if we're an online on a schedule, class is going to see it in real time. And if you're an online anytime class, then they'll see them in the discussion section, because that's where you'll post your speeches. But herein, this class right here at 9:30, y'all are on a schedule, and so we will have you present your speech live in Webex. And the only thing that you'll need to submit is the outline to this portal here for assignments. Do we have questions or comments? Remember, we're never sharing a Google Doc. Instead, we're just saving that outline from the template that's in the file section, totally populated with every word that you plan on saying. Rehearse it. Make sure that it contemplates 3 to 5 minutes worth of time in your estimation, and then upload it here before our classes start time. Questions or comments? Anyone have anything about submitting your outline to the assignment, informative speech assignment portal? Anyone have anything at all? Alrighty, thank you. Now let's go back really quick to your full sentence outline template and just make sure that we get our first kind of preamble on what to put where and what happens with the template. So you have the guns for all of this. Okay, so make sure you understand that all of this concerns you and is important. And we'll start over again with the above the fold material. So the above the fold material mimics the language of old newspaper culture, where it really just talks about the headline or the table of contents that lets the reader know what to expect. But this instead is really just typed to me. It's an organizing device for you, and it's to let me know what to look forward to for the rest of your speech. So again, you're going to type your own name here. You are going to leave the designation that tells us that it is a template. You may title your speech anything you want or nothing at all, because no one else besides just the two of us will know what your title is. Unless you title it something like Crazy Pants, Ridiculous. If you say, this is my tribute to the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza.com, I'll be like, wow, this is a heck of a title. Do you mind if we share it with the class? But otherwise, unless it's the most hilarious thing or it's intriguing, then your title is pretty much your business and no one else will know it. Then we have our purposes that build into our thematic statement. And as said previously, that your general purpose is really just a verb. And in westernized, anglicized, English-speaking culture, that verb is a to. So when we say to, that demonstrates intention, and then the verb itself has the action. So our general purpose for our informative speech will be to inform. When we get to the persuasive speech, it will be to persuade. If you enrolled in my 1315, which is a public speaking class, you would also learn how to use the purposes to eulogize, to tribute, to satirize, to introduce, to accept, as a whole bunch of different speech purposes. But herein, our first speech in 1311 is just to inform, and every single person in our class should have that same identical general purpose. And then your specific purpose is where it gets kind of spicy, and we talk about your particular subject. So we're getting more specific to your subject itself, and so you will use the specific purpose to inform the class about blank, and you will fill in the blank with whatever it is you're informing us about. To inform the class about wind turbines, to inform the class about my dog Pollyanna, to inform the class about antique Turkish teacup culture. Okay, cool. So whatever it is you're going to talk about, specific purpose is to inform the class about your subject. And your thematic statement, again, also known as a thesis statement, it's just a conjugation, gives a preview of what the entirety of the speech will cover, including its subtopics. And here, subtopics are designated as main points. So we're talking about a main point of your speech. It's something that you essentially are giving the guns to your audience about. Because when you give the guns, that means that you're the professor, and you are indeed the professor for your 3 to 5 minute stretch. You have a duty to inform us. We're falling back, we're listening, we're hanging out, and you are going to provide us information the same way that I provide information to you when I lecture. And so those main points are highlights, or things that you really want your audience to be able to separate out and understand them as individual concepts. The minimum number of main points that you have for this first speech, and here are the guns for that again, is 2. So you must have at least 2 main points. This means if you say that you're going to inform us about your trip to the Grand Canyon, you can't just say, I'm going to inform you about my trip to the Grand Canyon, and just throw a whole bunch of Grand Canyon trivia and details and intersperse them with your trip and how much it costs, and then say how the canyon was formed, and then go back to what you ate on the way to the trip, and then talk about dropping your cousin off, and then talk about how the crater was formed. It's going to be mixed up and jumbled. But we're going in a linear progression, and we're highlighting those main points to say, yes, I'm going to inform the class about my trip to the Grand Canyon. And the way that it will be organized will be, I will firstly begin with collecting money and estimating the cost of the trip. Then I will venture into discussing what we did once we got to the Grand Canyon. And then I will discuss, lastly, all of those cool things that we did on the trip back and other attractions that we got to partake in. So your thematic statement would say, today I will inform the class about my trip to the Grand Canyon, including the cost of getting there, cool stuff that we did while we were there, and also attractions we visited when we on our way home. So really just a truncated version, a brief detail of each main point in the order that you will speak them to your audience. Questions or comments about the above the fold material? Anyone have anything at all? And feel free. Questions or comments? Alrighty, and then we see the 3 major parts of the speech. Roman numeral 1, and it's going to concern you that they're Roman numerals. Roman numeral 1 is the introduction, Roman numeral 2 is the body, and Roman numeral 3 is the conclusion. And Roman numeral 1, next to the word introduction, you are going to type, hello, my name is Emily. Hello, I'm Ethan. Hello, my name is Olivia. Hey, it's your girl, Hope. Introduce yourself. Okay, so many students just plain out forget to do this. Make certain that you say, hello, my name is, and then whatever your preferred moniker is, that's how you introduce yourself. That's when your time begins, okay? Because that's when you begin speaking. Remember, you're not saying any part of the above the fold material. That's really just for your planning purposes, but you are going to speak during Roman numeral 1, your introduction. So when you say, for hi, my name is Emily, that's when your time starts. And at the conclusion, when you say for thank you, that's when it stops. Okay, so your introduction, where you introduce yourself, is when the time begins for you. And then we have our attention getter, our credibility statement, and our thematic statement. And all of these must maintain exactly their order, and they must use the A, B, and C capitalized just that way. So we're not mixing anything up. An attention getter is something that engages the audience. We have really about 15 to 20 seconds to make certain that the audience isn't making its Chipotle order or doing its nails or thinking about what kind of rims they're going to get on the car. But we need to do something that's going to engage the audience and say to it, yeah, you heard a lot of speeches today, but this is the speech. I'm going to inform you how to save over 70% off of your shoes every time you go to DSW. What did you say? Okay, so I'm in. Okay, so I'm listening to what it is that you have to say. So an attention getter can be a corny joke. I just flew in from San Antonio and boy, are my arms tired. Like, so if you say something that's completely ridiculous and people at the very least feel sorry for you, or you can just engage the class rapport-wise and say, is everybody ready for the weekend? I know it's already Tuesday, but this is the Friday-est Tuesday that I've ever experienced, and I'm ready for it to be over. I don't know about y'all. So an attention getter is something that is supposed to engage the audience. And then the credibility statement is something that asserts your authority over the topic. So it lets the audience know why it should believe you. You've likely heard the term ethos in other classes, such as ethos, pathos, and logos, where ethos, or your credibility, gives the image to the audience that you didn't just develop this thing off of the top of your head, but instead there is some research involved, or this is a personal experience that you've had. Write this down because this concerns you, or give yourself a note. I'm giving the guns for this one. Your credibility statement should always include a self-referencing pronoun, such as I, my, me, or mine. So your credibility statement should always say I, my, me, or mine, because we're not talking about the credibility of the subject itself, but the speaker, him, her, or their selves. You're not telling us why the Grand Canyon is important, or why cancer is important, or why tacos are important. But instead, you're telling us what your authority is to speak on the Grand Canyon, or on tacos, or on cancer. So your credibility statement would say something such as a person who doesn't travel a whole lot, matter of fact, I don't even have a passport, road trips with my family are pretty important. And this is the 5th one that I've been on. All right, so you're letting us know, here's how I feel qualified to tell you this thing. Unfortunately, my aunt had cancer and she had lung cancer. Everybody thought that she smoked, but she really didn't. I did some additional research about lung cancer for this speech, and here's what I've learned. My major has been astronomy, and so I like to look at the stars, but I'm also an astrology girl, and I've got crystals and tarots and really cool stuff. And so today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what your chart says about your ability to do well in school. So your credibility statement is going to exert really an answer to the unspoken question of why should the audience believe you? And then your thematic statement can be a copy and paste identically from the above the fold thematic statement, where you simply just copy it and drop it in there to say it aloud to your class. Or you can relax that verb a little bit in the vernacular. And let's see what that looks like. So again, above the fold, we need to see for your general purpose to inform, specific purpose to inform the class about my trip to the Grand Canyon, thematic statement to inform my class about the trip to the Grand Canyon, including how I made money to get there, how much it cost to get there, what we did, and then what we did on the way back. And so you can copy and paste that if you want to, but above the fold, all those informs need to stay there and exactly in that order. Inform, inform, inform. But in this thematic statement, in your introduction, those main points absolutely must maintain the same order. However, it's perfectly fine if you want to relax that pronoun and that verb a little bit and say, today I will tell you, today we will discuss, today we'll talk about. And when you say you or y'all or, we're going to chop it up about, it doesn't have to be the class, like you're sitting up straight and you're referring to us as like one homogenous unit. You can just say, today, I'll kick it with y'all for a minute about my trip to the Grand Canyon. But above the fold, since you're typing to me, you got to be really formal and keep that inform. Questions or comments about the introduction before we recap and get you up out of here? Questions or comments? All right, introduction. You're going to type, hello, my name is. Attention, credibility, and thematic statement need to stay in exactly the same order. Where attention is an attention getter piece, a credibility statement needs to use I, my, me, or mine to answer the unspoken question from the audience about why it should believe what it is that you're saying, or how you collected knowledge for the speech. And then your thematic statement can be a one-to-one copy and paste. No matter what, your main points have to maintain the same order, but you are allowed in the thematic statement that you actually speak to the class to be a little more loose on, instead of referring to us as the class, saying you or y'all or some mass noun in that way. And then you can also use a synonym for information if you'd like to, just in the thematic statement that's spoken, such as today I will tell y'all, educate you, discuss, today we'll talk about. Questions or comments about anything that we've discussed so far? Anyone have anything at all? Alrighty, on next class, we're going to continue from the body to the conclusion. It'll go pretty quickly. And then we're going to workshop and build an outline together and talk about the topics that you would like to discuss for your speech. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now. I'm going to mention to you that